Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join our webinar. My name is Matthew Maurer, and I am a marketing coordinator at Coastal Business Supplies. I am joined today by none other than Jimmy Lamb of Sawgrass Technologies. Jimmy is the manager of education and communications at Sawgrass and has over 25 years of experience in the apparel decoration industry. Today, he will be talking to us about improving the efficiency of your sublimation process. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Jimmy Lamb. Thank you, Jimmy.
Hey, thanks, Matthew. Great to be here as always, and it's a good subject. I mean, I'll hammer into people's head if you ever give me the opportunity that it's all about time is money. I mean, at the end of the day, when you first start out, if you got one job a week, well, you got all week to do it. But I mean, when you get to the point where you're actually in a position to make a profit, a whole lot comes down to efficiency and really how many pieces you can get per hour. So, we're going to be touching on that and a lot of other things as we go. But always keep that in mind. Growing business, you got to get more and more efficient or get more for less, as you can see there in the title. All right, so let's talk about some ways that we can do that. Now, time is money. I mean, it's a cliche. You hear it all the time, but it's one of the things I learned years ago. A lot of you know, some of you don't, that I started as an embroiderer. So we're going to talk about embroidery today or not. But I just started as an embroiderer, and I learned the same thing there. It really came down to what does it cost per hour to run my business, and how many widgets can I produce per hour against that overhead. So if it costs $100 an overhead, I made one item, it costs $100, whether with sublimation, screen printing, embroidery, whatever. If I did two in an hour, they cost $50. I mean, that's really and truly what they cost. And a lot of times we're running around saying, oh, how much ink do we use? How many square inches of ink are in there? And what did that cost? And what was the sheet of paper and all that kind of stuff? So the whole concept carries over everywhere. Time is money. So when you ask a sublimator, though, where their costs are, they always go right to the ink. And and I understand why. I mean, if you had to go out and buy 4 cartridges of ink right now from Coastal, nothing against Coastal, of course, because they're a great supplier, but you're gonna write a check, and you're gonna give them a substantial amount of money for our Sawgrass ink, and so that's gonna stick in your head. So I understand that, and I understand that as a good business owner, you do need to be aware of those things and all that. But look at all these other things that go into play. We want to do a T-shirt. Well, what's the T-shirt cost? What percentage of the pie is that? What's the image cost? The ink and the paper. And it's a pretty small sliver. What's your labor and overhead? Now, if you're working solo, a lot of times you think that you don't have a labor cost, but you really do, because you've got to pay yourself sometime. Okay, and if you have employees, different story. And then you have your gross margin, which we want to be, a big part of our little pie chart there. So let's drill down a little bit deeper. Let's say we're using our Virtuoso SG800 with a Substrates HD ink, and I'm doing an 8-inch by 10-inch, or if you're into metric, I have that as well. Full color image on a poly performance tee. What's that really going to cost to make? All right. Just for fun, let's say your cost of operation is $30 per hour, because that's easy math for me because I don't have a calculator handy, right? So if your operation is $30 per hour, and I'm not doing a pricing webinar today. We've done some in the past. We'll probably do some more in the future. But a lot of this is derived from you doing some research and coming up with the spreadsheets and then deriving these kind of information so you can help you figure out your pricing. But for our discussion, $30 per hour, which is 50 cents per minute. Okay, so it makes it easy to add things up, right? Let's say your production time that it costs 1 minute to print that image, and probably that image would have been done in 30 seconds, to be honest. And let's say it took 1 minute to press it onto the shirt. Yeah, it's going to be 1 minute. And honestly, there can be other time in there. I just want to keep it really simple right here for purpose of discussion. I didn't include, for example, setting up the artwork. I didn't include, for example, putting it onto the heat press and getting it set the right way. And some people are really fast at that, some are really slow. But the reality is, let's say that it took 2 minutes to print and press the shirt at 50 cents per minute. Okay, that meant it cost $1 to print and press that shirt. Though nowhere do we talk about ink cost and all the other things, because all those are actually wrapped up in your overhead, or should be. Okay, so it cost me $1 to print and press the shirt, period. But then I had downtime associated with it. And when I went to set the job up, see, now I'm putting in the setup time. You didn't see it up there above, right? That was just the true production time. But the setup time, let's say it was 5 minutes, because we were going to, if we're really doing a t-shirt right, we're putting down the foam and we're using a lint roller and maybe a little spray adhesive on the transfer and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's easy 5 minutes to set it up. And maybe that includes your artwork. I mean, if you use like the Creative Studio product and it's just a simple image, you can get it set up really quick and ready to print. If you got to do it from scratch, you probably need to be charging an art fee, to be honest. Okay, so 5 minutes to set up at 50 cents a minute is $2.50. Post-production time, hey, we open the heat press, everything's hot, but we got to pull off the blowout sheet, pull off the transfer without making any ghosting issues. Pull the shirt out. The shirt's going to be hot, kind of have to stick it aside, let it cool down. And just for fun, I was doing one shirt. So if I was doing one shirt, I got a little bit of paperwork to do. So let's say my post-production time was 5 minutes to kind of wrap the job up. Okay, 5 minutes and 50 cents per minute, that's another $2.50. So if I add everything up, $1 for the print press time, the setup time was $2.50, the post-production time was $2.50, the total production cost beginning and end was $6. What do I want to do to save money on that job? Okay, the thing you want to do is figure out how you can reduce some of that setup and post-production time, because that's where your highest cost is. Though initially a lot of people would say, hey, make the image smaller so I use less ink. Well, my ink cost on that image was about 40 cents, and the paper cost on that particular image was about 20 cents. Okay, so our media, total media cost came out to 60 cents. You're not going to find much savings there, but the key here, when I say time is money, is trying to figure out how to keep that heat press closed with something in it and turned on, because that's when you're truly making money. You're making money when you're pressing, and when you open the heat press, you quit producing money. Okay, so just kind of try to get your head around that one a little bit, right? All right, so if we kind of break it down for the sublimation production cost, the print and press, the pre, the post, the ink, the media, and a margin, okay, this came out to, you can see all the breakdowns, okay, that's what I'm just trying to show you, percentage breakdowns. And, you start to see, hey, that blank t-shirt is way up there. That pre and post time, and you're probably not going to get the t-shirt cost down. Your pre and post time is way up there as well. Your margin needs to be a lot higher than that, okay? So I don't know why I ended up with a $3.38 margin. You definitely should be a whole lot higher than there. And then again, this number too should be much higher of the percentage of the cost, okay? So, but main thing I wanted you to see was you have controllable things, and keep that in mind that if these things are too high, then that margin is going to be low. So you would much rather shift this to a lower number so this can go higher. And it's just something you got to think about. How can we be more efficient in everything we do, not just t-shirts, okay? Really and truly, the ink costs for this shirt were approximately 4% of the total selling price of the shirt. So you got to figure out where my money is being spent. Well, let's start with substrates. And there's a lot of substrates out, because you saw substrates are pretty high. And, Coastal has fantastic collection of substrates, and everything I've seen has been good pricing, and they offer all kinds of specials and deals and whatnot. And this is your job to keep up with that, okay? Know what they carry and focus on what it is that you do, because if it's something you rarely do, you're just going to buy it for the job. But if it's something you do all the time, you might actually buy in bulk. Also think about good, better, best, okay? Because in many times you can find a product that really does have sort of a good, better, best. I mean, you look at coasters, there's some real inexpensive coasters on one end, but as you move up the scale towards like sandstone or something like that, they get better and better, and they have a higher price point, good, better, best. But part of that good, better, best is saying, if it's got a higher initial price point, does it have a higher perceived value where I can make more money too? But it's good to have a collection to show your customers of good, better, best, and let them pick out what they want, okay? And go from there, and just work really hard on keeping the margins up, whether it's the good, the better, or the best. That's very important to do. But always make sure that it is a high quality product, because at the end of the day, Customer's going to remember that part. They're going to forget what it cost. They're going to remember whether it survived what it was used for or not. Bulk buying, I'm telling you. You see a sale out there on stuff like coffee mugs. I mean, everybody does coffee mugs unless you don't have a mug press, but everybody does coffee mugs. I mean, coffee mug is pretty much the #1 sublimation product out there. So why not stock up on it? Okay, stock up on it. If you're going to sell a lot of mugs, you find Coastal has a special deal for you. And don't forget that they're typically going to give you a better price in a larger quantity. Okay, so they got a better price in a larger quantity and pass it on to you a little bit. So, you know, shop and look instead of saying, I just need 12 mugs for this job. Well, maybe you should go out and buy, you know, 12 dozen mugs and have the rest sitting in boxes until you need them, provided you do mugs on a regular basis. But I wouldn't do that with everything, okay? So just keep in mind that when you're buying in bulk, you're typically paying less money for each of those substrates and bringing that cost down. Now, there's another part of that too, because, you know, a lot of times we do see deals where shipping is included or whatever, but if shipping is involved, the shipping rate per pound drops as the quantity increases. So it's much cheaper to ship one large order than multiple small orders. If you really do the math, you'll find that out. I figured that out a long time ago, looking at UPS charts, that it got cheaper per pound the more I was shipping. So think about that too. So if I'm going to go out and buy 12 dozen mugs and I have to pay shipping, my shipping is probably going to be less than if I bought 12 orders of 12 mugs. Keep that part in mind too. Save some more money there. But as I said before, if you buy too much of something you don't sell very often, it's probably going to sit in the shelf for a long time too, so keep that part in mind. Okay, well, let's reduce some of our downtime costs, because we saw substrate costs is a pretty high percentage of the pie, and so are downtime costs. So are there other things we can do looking at downtime? When the press is open, it's not making money. That's just the way I like to put it. When it's closed, it is. So you want to focus on keeping it closed, of course, with something in it and it turned on. So that's very important. But there's something deeper here where I'm going, because if you can have your heat press closed a greater percentage of each hour actually producing stuff, then you're getting more units per hour and the cost per unit is going down in production. So part of that is, can we minimize press adjustments? I mean, every time that you put a different substrate in, do you have to put in some different numbers? And you know, definitely read the manufacturer's recommendations. But certainly when we talk about things that are different thickness, for example, if you did a metal photo panel, it's very thin. If you're doing a t-shirt, it's very thin. But if you went then to a wooden plaque, it's a lot thicker. We're going to have to change the pressure of the heat press in each situation. If you go to apparel, if you're doing 100% polyester apparel, you know, I typically am working with numbers that are 35 to 45 seconds, so I got to change that. My temperature is usually 380 to 390, got to change that and wait for the heat press to recycle. And PSI is extremely low, so I got to change that. So what I'm getting at is, if you're jumping from one thing to the next and you're constantly readjusting your heat press, you may not be as efficient with your time, especially with temperature changes, because it takes a while for it to either warm up or cool down to the new temperature setting. So you want to start thinking about that in what you're doing. I mean, think on a regular day, just take a look and say, how many times am I having to make changes in what I'm doing for production? Now, the way I look at it is this. I would much rather do as many things as possible with the exact same settings without making any changes, because I can keep things rolling. And when you look at jobs that people sometimes order, they have multiple items and they require different settings. But if you can look at jobs as they come in and break each job down by the substrate type and then recategorize them as sub-jobs, you can be a little bit more efficient. I'm going to show you a chart that really explains what I'm saying here in just a minute. But the bottom line here is, if I could do all my mugs together and then do all my photo panels together and then do all my shirts together, regardless of whose order they came from, I'm probably more efficient with the time at the heat press, okay? Unless everything's onesies and twosies, then it may not help you at all. So I look at the work that's coming in, and I stage that work, and I do it by this. So first level breakdown is looking at the thickness. I want to press everything that's got the same thickness, you know, pretty much together, because I definitely got to do a pressure setting for that. Then I want to look at the material, because the idea here is to be able to work with everything with minimal temperature settings, so grouping things together that way. And the third level breakdown is by size, because I'm also thinking about how many pieces can I put under the press at the same time. You know, that's just getting that much more use out of the press. So here's my little chart, just for example. Let's say we had 3 clients. You can see client number 1, they had 12 t-shirts, 6 plaques, 6 iPhone covers, 6 license plates. Client B had 6 plaques, 6 license plates, 6 mouse pads, and of course you can see client C what they had. All right. So if you broke it down by products, you know, depending on, phone covers have come a long way. You know, our initial phone covers were all like plastic frames with a metal insert. And that metal insert for that phone cover was about the same thickness, definitely the same material as a metal license plate. So it you know, using that as a reference, I would do the phone cover and then the license plate, because they're both metal. They're going to have the same temperature, they're going to have the same pressure, they're going to have the same time, you know, whatnot. The wood plaques are going to be pretty thick. So I'm definitely going to have to adjust the pressure to accommodate that thicker plaque. So that's a stop point. Doesn't take a lot of time, but my whole point is if you're doing that 5 or 6 times an hour, it takes up a whole lot of time. If you're doing it 1 time per hour, it doesn't take that much time, right? And then we have mouse pads, which, boy, do they smell bad when you do those things. But anyway, nothing we can do to get around that. Mouse pad has sort of a medium thickness. And finally, the T-shirts, because the reality on the T-shirts, if you're using the foam process and everything, they have a very unique setup. Another good reason to do as many T-shirts as you can once you get that set up the right way. But you see how I broke it all down? And I was doing it by product, not by client. And then the idea is I got to be able to get everything back to where it belongs, okay? So let me show you how I do this. You're going to love this, because I like simplicity. And I want you to picture, I mean, you know, when I'm working 2 shifts a day, multiple shifts, you know, or multiple days per week, and there's a lot of products running through, how do you keep up with that? You know, most of our products come in a cardboard box, and we kind of leave them in there. But a cardboard box isn't the best way to do it, and I'll show you exactly what I use here in a minute. But the first thing I want to do is I'll take that master invoice or work order, as you can see here on the left, and this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different products. So I see it as 5 different sub-jobs. So if you simply take that and make, you know, well, really you got the master, and then you got 5 individual copies. And then on each individual copy, you just highlight the one item that you care about on that. Because think of each individual copy as being one item of that main list. So you highlight it. The point being is you're identifying how many products, you know, belong to Joe, right? You know, by doing that. Then I've always used laundry baskets, not cardboard boxes, laundry baskets. And I do it for a couple of simple reasons. Number one, when they're empty, they stack very nicely. Number two, when they're full, you can look through the sides and you can see what's inside. Now you visualize a big wall down one side of like a small warehouse kind of building that's got metal shelving with lots of laundry baskets. At least you can see through them and see what's in there. Cardboard boxes are all different shapes and sizes, and you can't see what's in them. You got to write it on the box. But then you take your work order, and so I took like all the T-shirts that belonged to Joe, put them in a basket, and taped that sub-job sheet on the front. It's highlighted. Yeah, we got 12 T-shirts in here. They belong to Joe. So and that tells me what's going to go on it. And then I break all of his other products into other baskets, but then I have a shelf that's nothing but T-shirts. I have a shelf that might be nothing but mugs, and a shelf that might be nothing but plaques. You see where I'm going? The idea, again, is can I make more efficiency of production by keeping things rolling? And you always got to look closely at all those things because, in small piece jobs, you got to stop and go set up your printing, and, there's just a lot of things to think about. But also keep in mind, too, that you can set up print jobs and maybe at the end of the day just start printing the work for the next day. So you're not waiting on printing. That's one thing you got to think about. Okay, size matters, maximizing the printing. And you always want to think about speed and coverage because, again, it helps to reduce your downtime and maximize paper utilization. So if you already have a system, you might look at the next few slides and say, okay, whatever. But if you don't have a system, you definitely want to pay attention to the next few slides. And you always want to think about where do I go next, okay? A lot of people start with the SG400. It has a maximum media size 8.5 by 14 individual sheets. And if you're doing just small jobs and small pieces, really doesn't matter. But if you start getting into volume jobs, you see I got 6 phone covers on one sheet, or I got 6 coasters on one sheet. If I'm doing apparel, I have a sort of a limited size. I can only do things so large. But what I'm thinking about here is how many pieces can I print and then press at the same time? Because ideally what you want to do is you want to take all 6 of these phone covers, put that one sheet under the heat press with 6 phone cover blanks on it and press all 6 at the same time. It's the exact same amount of time, 1 minute to do all those. So it didn't matter if you put 6 phone covers underneath or 1, it was still 1 minute of pressing. The more you can get under there at the same time, the more pieces you're moving per hour. If you bought the SG800, the standard media size is up to 11 inches by 17 inches. With a bypass tray, you can do single sheets of 13 by 19. And there are some custom papers even larger than that you can do with that bypass tray. But just in comparison to the 400, you can see that I'm able to get, like, on a single sheet, because I can do a bigger sheet, okay? I'm knocking out 12 phone covers or 12 coasters and then a larger area on the shirt. And then of course we have a VJ628 that we manufacture at Sawgrass, which is a roll of feed. So the theory is you could do 200 yards worth of phone covers, okay? So you can really do some volume that way. All right. But you also have the heat press factor and all this you got to consider, because it typically takes longer to press than to print unless you're doing really big images. If you're doing really big images, it may take over a minute to print, but typically with the SG800 and the SG400, most of those will print within 1 minute based on the size parameters. When you get into something like the VJ628, you're doing prints that are like 36 inches by 24 inches full bleed photographic, it might take several minutes to print. So you want to try to keep your output of the printer consistent with the heat press output. Okay, that's you don't want there to be a bottleneck anywhere, and the heat press is usually your bottleneck. So you want to make sure that you're always printing, obviously, so it's not a bottleneck. But some people, when they do volume, feel actually like it makes better sense to get a much larger heat press than what's needed for their printer, and then actually have multiple printers feeding it. So, so many times people go out and they'll buy an SG400, SG800, they'll buy a 16 by 20 heat press because it is a good match. But they didn't consider like a 24 by 25 or something of that nature, where now I can do more big things at the same time or a whole lot more smaller things at the same time. So there's a lot of different ways we can kind of think through all of that. Again, the main thing is maximizing our printing and pressing time. If you look at our Virtuoso Print Manager, which we call VPM for short, okay, it has a lot of good features in there to help you be more productive. We have features now that allow you to, we sometimes use the word gang, we sometimes use the word nest, multiple images together, so we can try to maximize how many images are on each page. So by playing with those functions, you're again maximizing your printing, and then if you're printing and pressing, multiple images at the same time, you're maximizing your pressing too. Now, when we talk about media is the paper, and again, maximizing it is important because we're trying to maximize production, but we're also trying to maintain cost. Okay, a single sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11, is around 20 cents. Okay, it's around 20 cents. So nothing wrong with loading it up, because you do 10 sheets, that's $2. You do, you keep going on and on and on, and the price goes up and up and up, the cost, what you're spending, right? But it's 20 cents a sheet at the end of the day. Always remember that. You definitely want to try to match papers. That's one of the cool things. I mean, Coastal has different size papers. As an example, mug paper, okay? If you're printing an image for a mug and you use an 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17, there's a whole lot of unused space on that page, and it's just really being wasted. But if you buy the mug paper, then you have the right size paper for the job, and you're really maximizing your paper cost by doing that. But always you want to put as many images on there as you can, but match the paper size to the job. Now, how do you get all these printed images on there together? That's what we call the ganging and nesting. Okay, the idea is figuring that out when you're setting up your artwork, going through all that, how many I can print out onto a single sheet. And you can mix different images together. A lot of times everybody thinks, oh, it has to be the exact same image, same product. The key here is thinking about what are these going to go on, because let's say again that those phone covers are just the metal inserts, and let's say that just for fun that the coaster is a metal insert, or a metal coaster, the same thickness, same material, and that the Florida is going on like a wall panel, same material, metal, all the settings are the same. So conceivably, you could print that out, what you see right there, and then you could put all those blanks on there, and you can go press them at the same time. However, that's not really the case here, because the actual coasters happen to be a hard plastic type of material, FRP. The phone cases are metal inserts, and Florida's going like on a wooden plaque. So if you're mixing up different types of substrates printing on the same piece of paper, you would have to cut the paper. And there's nothing wrong with cutting the paper. It's just extra labor. That's all I'm saying. It's just extra labor. There's nothing wrong with cutting if you can do it, pretty fast. What you don't want to do is to get too crazy with the cutting, because you start spending a lot more time cutting. And here's where you got to think about. You got to think about that time and money aspect too. How much does it really cost you to cut it? Okay. Keep in mind that at 20 to 30 cents per sheet of paper, time is actually more expensive than the paper itself. So what I don't want you to do is spend 15 minutes trying to figure out how to get all those things on one sheet of paper. Because if you spend 15 minutes doing that at 50 cents per minute, okay, you didn't save anything, because the paper was only, in this case, probably 30 cents. So you didn't save anything. So the point is to maximize the use of the paper quickly, simply, and easily, and don't go too crazy trying to put too many things on there, and figure out all the different ways you can lay it out, okay? Now, if you're using, and you should be, but if you're using our Virtuoso Print Manager, so if you're a user of the SG400, SG800, VJ628, then you have access to Virtuoso Print Manager. It came with your system. Virtuoso Print Manager actually has a function in it that you can just select all the different, individual jobs, as we say, that you want to print, and you can have the software automatically calculate for you where to place everything. It'll figure out how to maximize images on the paper. You have to give it some information like what size paper you're using, things like that. But yeah, it'll take all these things and try to figure it out for you. So that's a pretty cool tool. So keep that in mind. If you're using VPM, use that feature. If you're using an older system where you're not using VPM, then you would look at trying to gang things up. You're using Photoshop, for example, of doing basic like a copy and paste type of thing within boundaries of the given size sheet of paper, so you can print out multiples at the same time. Few more time savings. Let's go back to VPM again, because I know a lot of you do have VPM. If you haven't learned how to use hot folders, it's something you should learn how to use. And we do have a whole tutorial. It's pretty big. It's the whole user's guide of VPM online. But the cool thing about a hot folder is what you do is you actually can put in settings, okay, print settings for, let's say, a coffee mug, using the print settings that you feel like are best in VPM, and then you can basically save them in a hot folder. And then every time that you're ready to do a mug, you can actually drag and drop the mug image into your hot folder, and it immediately applies all those settings of VPM that you have, predetermined to that image, and then you're ready to send it to the printer. In fact, you can make it an auto process. So let's say you're doing mugs routinely, you just created the artwork, dropping in that folder, it goes straight to the printer and starts printing. So hot folders are pretty cool, very easy to set up, but it's something, if you haven't experimented with, try it out. Go online, go to our support section if you're a VPM user, find your printer, work your way down into the VPM, and find the user's guide video and check into it, okay? A lot of great things there can help you out. Templates, creating templates, using templates. If you're using Creative Studio, I know not everyone does, but if you use Creative Studio, keep in mind that it has well over 1,000 substrate templates already built in, with the bleeds in there. It offers well over 1,000 ready-made product templates, well over 1,000. Okay, so those substrate templates help you set it up. And if you never played with that, I know a lot of people, they have Photoshop, they don't even touch Creative Studio. But for doing basic jobs, you may find Creative Studio is faster. So it's just something to think about. Use those substrate templates so you can actually save things as a template so you can use it again in the future. Well, whatever you do, when you're creating things for a product, make it a point to save a template of some kind so that you can go back and easily set up the next job for that same type of product. Then we have artwork templates, and we don't call them artwork templates. We actually call them designs at this point, but they are print-ready designs, and it's well over 1,400 print-ready designs that can be edited as needed. So again, the idea is to be quick and easy. If these designs that you can edit and turn them around to whatever you need to use, do it, okay? Just be quick with it, and that's what we're trying to say, move it through quicker. Question comes up a lot of times about using tape versus spray. Usually we're using heat tape to put our products onto the paper. I have played with spray adhesives, temporary spray adhesives. They work great on apparel. They don't work as well with non-apparel products, but I did experiment. I found one that was the Albatross 1077 that actually worked pretty well on non-apparel products. And I'd much rather use that than tape because it's a little bit of tackiness that holds it in place. The key is that it doesn't mess up the image. So experiment with it before you go and start doing massive production. But if you can use the spray, I feel like it goes faster than the tape. So it's just one more little tidbit there. And then the final thing is having an organized work area. If you got to constantly go hunt for stuff, you're using time, okay? And that means that your heat press is open and there's nothing in it. So you do want to organize your work area, that everything's at hand's reach. You have your supplies where you need them. You want to make sure you have spare supplies. I'm starting to say this in almost every webinar. Make sure you have a spare waste tank for your SG400 or SG800 printer. They're not very expensive, but if your waste tank fills up, it stops the printer, and now you're stopped printing until you order a new one. So I would tell you to have a spare one on hand, and as soon as the one that's in the printer fills up, you put the spare in, order another spare. They're not expensive. Keep it on hand. They never expire, anything like that, okay? But it can sure stop the job. So always make sure that you do have the right inventory of what you need so you're not stopped in the middle of a job and having to wait or order overnight, which can be expensive, okay? All right, so those are just some tips to kind of help you out with production, and that covers what I wanted to cover today.